Thor Love and Thunder is less than 2 weeks away, so to celebrate the God of Thunder's return to the MCU, we're looking back on every single Thor movie, starting today with Kenneth Branagh's Thor. A reckless and arrogant, soon-to-be king Thor Odinson reignites an ancient war that threatens the peace within the 9 realms, forcing the All-Father Odin to cast his own son out to Midgard, so he can learn what it means to be a king, but more importantly, a hero. Before I get started with my review for Thor, let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Feel free to talk spoilers as I will in this video, and like I said, this is the first of a 3-part series where I will be reviewing every single Thor film leading up to Thor Love and Thunder. So if you love the Thor films, the MCU, movies, and TV, this is the place to be. So consider clicking that subscribe button and you won't miss any of the Thor reviews or any of your favorite conversations, your favorite movies, and TV. 11 years after the release of this film, after 3, soon to be 4 Thor films, this is still to me the best Thor movie, in great part due to Kenneth Branagh, a classically trained Shakespearean actor and director that brings in that education, those qualities, and the sophistication that comes with it into this film. It very much feels that if Shakespeare himself was to write a superhero story, this would be the result. The regalness, the majesty, the magnificence with which he captures Asgard and the mythos of the Asgardians, these larger-than-life, fantastical characters that feel like characters from myth. He brings that grandeur onto the screen. And I don't think any MCU film, I don't think any Thor film since this one has captured Asgard and its inhabitants so well. You can just look at the opening coronation scene as it lays all that groundwork for the interpersonal dynamics, the conflicts between characters that are so compelling, and the themes, the resonant themes that this film tackles all throughout. That opening scene not only presents all of that, you start to see all these interesting interactions between characters. It looks fabulous. Every time you're on Asgard, it's just blissful and beautiful, and you don't really want to leave. That's what you want. If a movie is transporting you into Asgard or Olympus or any realm from mythology, you want to feel that way. You want to feel like you're in a completely different place than Earth, and this film makes you feel that. Again, not only the visuals, the score by Patrick Doyle throughout this film is one of the most underrated he has ever done for anything. Furthermore, it's not only in the visuals, it's not only in the score, it's not only in the acting, and this film kind of has some of the best performances in the MCU, if you ask me. The dialogue carries real gravitas. It's enough approximated to a Shakespearean kind of dialogue without being too antagonistic to regular audiences. They use more abrasive terms. They use more expensive words that are not commonly used by people. You start to notice it once the film begins cutting back and forth between Earth and Asgard, and you start to notice the dialogue on the Asgard scenes a whole lot more, and because of that, it stands out for the better. One of my favorite exchanges is early on when Thor and his friends are trying to sneak out to Jotunheim, and Loki tries to parley with Heimdall.
Heimdall, may we pass?
Never has an enemy slipped my watch until this day.
Again, the inflections feel different. They're more slow, they're more assertive, and this one in particular is also our first subtle hint at Loki being behind all the evil machinations of this film, but also Heimdall being aware of it so early on. And so you have the groundwork laid for a great, fantastical story. So Branagh brings the sophistication, the gravitas, the rich themes, character dynamics. He also brings, in fairness, a lot of Dutch angles. This film has kind of become prolific for all the Dutch angles. It's not like Branagh never used them outside of this film, but it was never really his signature per se. So it's weird that he used it so much in this film. Some people really dislike that, some people really appreciate it. I wouldn't say I really appreciate it, but to me, they very well represent the disorientation of Thor, his misplacement on Earth, again, as this mythological figure, this grander than life, fantastical god that now finds himself on Earth in this small town with houses that feel and look like they would break so much more easier than he would. I think it's effective. I think it's there for a purpose, and it serves that purpose rather well, particularly in the scenes with S.H.I.E.L.D. when Thor is in cuffs, he's not willing to fight anymore, he's in this depressive state. I think they really work in those moments. The scene where he tries to lift Mjolnir, I think it's rather effective in that sequence. And for the most part, if I'm honest, it's very subdued. It's not like it's just Dutch angles on the Earth scenes. It's when a scene emotionally calls for it, when there's this kind of confrontation, when the characters are at peace, like when Thor is walking down the street, when Thor is having this nice conversation with Jane on the fire about how magic and science are one and the same thing. It's a static shot. It's very much in line. It's horizontal. It's not Dutch angle and all that. So I think the Dutch angles are very effective in the purpose they're serving in this film. They're not my favorite technique. I could do with or without them, but in that sense, they don't enhance their experience, but they also don't take away from it from me. And it's when Thor gets cast out to Earth after invading Jotunheim, after we do get to see him a little bit in action and his friends as well, we start to see how everyone is in the battlefield, how everyone is different. It gives us some hints at Loki's true identity. We also get to see Odin at his most savage and powerful. But once Thor gets sent to Earth and he falls onto Jane Foster's car, a lot of people kind of give up on this film. Not me. Despite it being presented, structured like your classic fish out of water story, which it is, that's kind of exactly what makes it work, because underneath the surface, it's giving you this great story of this larger-than-life person in this very small town, with these very small people per se. These people have not seen the world, they have not dreamed of gods, of fantastical adventures, yet a god is right here, in small-town America. And it works so well. The humor, the fun that comes with it is so distinct to this film, much like the dialogue and the visuals and the sophistication that Branagh brings in to his actors, to all that. He also brings that with how he directs this kind of humor. With Thor being a fish out of water story, you have the scene where he drinks coffee, smashes the mug, where he completely loses it when someone is trying to take some blood from him, or my personal favorite, when he walks into the pet shop.
I need a horse.
We don't have horses, just dogs, cats, birds.
And give me one of those large enough to ride.
But the scenes on Earth with Thor are not only great by themselves. You really start to see how Thor is really this petulant child that really has no cares or worries, nor has anyone that he really cares for. He only had one goal, one objective. It was the throne. That made him too arrogant, too selfish. He focused too much on things that don't really matter. And an early scene with Odin and young Loki and Thor captures that beautifully in the lessons that this film tries to teach to its characters. And again, the resonant themes that it tackles of family, loyalty, and fathers and sons and brothers at war, because one of the big elements that makes this film work so well is not only Thor, it's not only the journey of humility that he goes in, it's Loki as well, because Loki, he is not presented as just a villain. He is a complete contrast to Thor, but in a lot of ways very similar. Loki is subtle. Loki hides in the shadows, but as soon as Thor is out of the picture, you start to see he was hiding in the shadows because Thor would move out of the way. Loki is very much like Thor in the sense that he wants to make his father proud. All he does is please his father, even after that incredible scene where Loki confronts Odin about what he is, why Odin took him from the frost giants. Was he just an object? Another trophy to be used? It's such an incredible scene that puts into perspective how much Loki was hiding behind Thor, how much he was obscured by Thor's shadow, even to his father, and still throughout the rest of the film, despite all the lies, despite an incredibly sad scene between Loki and Thor in a cell where Loki lies about Odin dying and about how Thor is not welcome in Asgard, now Loki's king. That scene stirs up real emotion because you know how much Thor loves Loki and you know Loki's lying, and yet it's all to please his father. The scheme about bringing the Jotuns in at the beginning and bringing the Jotuns in after Thor is gone, Loki is still trying to please his father. It's all for him, to make him proud, to show him that he can be king. But it's kind of doing exactly the same thing Thor did at the beginning, just in a different way. They are, both of them, still children who don't see the bigger picture, who are not ready for the throne. This gives the film this powerful Lion King dynamic, bringing us back to Shakespeare with now two brothers instead of an uncle and nephew, that I just don't feel was ever as well captured as it was here. There's richness in the contrast between the story of these two brothers, where one goes down this path of adversity, where he learns to care for something more beyond the throne, beyond power, something and someone worth caring for. As the relationship between Thor and Jane develops, her so interested in science and the 9 realms and magic, how science and magic correlate to one another, while another one machinates his way into that position, only seeing the throne, where it then feels and looks awkward. And Branagh passes that on to the audience very effectively with just visuals, with just exchanges between characters that are exposition, but they don't feel like exposition. They just flow so naturally between the characters and in the movie itself, with just this amazing character development as the back and forth between Earth and Asgard contrast one another so well. Where when you first see Loki has become the king of Asgard, he looks awkward in the throne. It looks too big for him. The scepter in his hand looks too big for him. I love that. And Thor starts to feel like he belongs. He starts to mix in well with the people, eventually helping them as the destroyer armor comes into Earth. And I really love this film for doing that. For doing that in a lot of ways with just visuals. And while the third act, after Thor is willing to sacrifice himself, he gets killed, but he gets Mjolnir again, he's worthy again, one of the best quote-unquote transformation scenes in the MCU, and he goes to Asgard to stop his brother. This climax, even though it's not one of the biggest spectacle in the MCU, it doesn't have like the most fireworks, it's one of those that feels the most personal, and it carries the most emotion in it. You know it's two brothers fighting, and you know one of them really loves the other one, really doesn't want to do this. Furthermore, this emotional resonance is felt because neither Loki nor Thor want to kill each other. That's emotionally powerful. That's potent. That's relatable. That's an interesting conflict to have in a final battle that then forces our hero to make the sacrifice that he makes. That causes pain to our antagonist, that we understand why it causes that pain, bringing him to that place of shame, where he rather die than live with his father not being proud of him. That's what elevates this film. Eventually, none of them win. That's one of my favorite aspects about this finale. It's that neither Loki nor Thor win, because Loki doesn't get what he wanted. He doesn't get to destroy Jotunheim, but Thor has to sacrifice the love, the things, and the people that he learned to care for on Earth. He has to sever that connection. And that is one of the lessons that Odin was trying to pass on to his children. So it's a finale that really works emotionally. It has enough cool action. It has dazzling visuals. Again, the visuals that Branagh brings into this film in this final sequence are so incredible, with even Loki still, after all of this, pleading to his father, kind of being proud of what he did. And once his father rejects him, he prefers to die over living with this rejection. It's one of the things that makes him so compelling. And one of the things that I haven't talked about in this film, in this review, is these performances. Tom Hiddleston and Anthony Hopkins, particularly in this film, still two of the best MCU performances, right up there for me. Chris Hemsworth is also spectacular. He not only looks like Thor, he walks like Thor, he talks like Thor, he feels like Thor. Despite this being Hemsworth and Hiddleston's first big break, Hemsworth in particular, you didn't know this guy before, but as soon as he walks on screen, you believe this guy is Thor. And both of them are spectacular. They carry that charisma. Hemsworth in particular carries that humor that he will become so famous for. It's just some of the best casting done in these films, and a great part why this film works so well. However, not everything works that well. The action, the themes, the brothers and father and son's story really works. My issue with this film, it doesn't develop Jane Foster and Thor that well. Jane Foster herself, I really like. She's a go-getter. She's very proactive in this story. She wants to know more. She goes out there and seeks it. She helps Thor. She's very effective in the role she has to play. I don't believe this love story whatsoever. In fact, as much as I really love that finale, I wish Thor didn't realize he actually felt something for Jane until it was too late. I wish they didn't kiss right before he takes the Bifrost back to Asgard to confront Loki. It's a character that I think works on her own. Thor is a character that I think works on his own extremely well. Since this film, he has been one of my favorite MCU heroes. Jane Foster and Thor as a couple, however, I think the film very much undercooks it. The film doesn't feel interested in it at all. It very much feels like it's mandated because it happens in the comics, because eventually they want to do something with it. They have to establish it here. They have to have that kiss here. I think it would have been so much more powerful if both of them, but maybe even just Thor, only realized that they felt something on that level for each other until it was too late. Once we get the reveal at the end with Heimdall, he still sees her, she's looking for Thor, and Thor smiles, and that's the end. I think that would have worked so well. That final moment works so well, but I don't think the relationship works. I think the film does not care about this relationship, and therefore none of us care about this relationship. Thor carries a Shakespearean majesty in its storytelling. The regalness and grandeur with which it captures the mythos of Asgard is given real gravitas, exploring compelling themes of family, fatherhood, and humility in a tale of brothers at war and a god king becoming a humble man, creating for a timeless origin story. I'm giving Thor an A-. And those are my thoughts on Kenneth Branagh's Thor. I want to know what you think in the comments below, and remember that I'm reviewing every single Thor film up until Thor Love and Thunder comes out. So if you don't want to miss any of those, make sure to click the subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to my channel members for always supporting the channel. Until the next one, love each other and love the movies.